and he's much better looking than I am. So I'm the interim chair. I'm Mike Bradovich. I'm the biochemist in these parts, and we have a real treat for you today. We have all the way from Guatemala, Michigan. We have Ms. Jessica Perfetti, and Jessica was our Gilman Scholarship winner last year, and she spoke about the Gilman Scholarship. And if you want to know more about the Gilman Scholarship, there's a Gilman workshop April 24th in the CCS office at 10 o'clock Friday, but since you won't remember that, it's all right here, so that's up here. But Jess is here to tell us about her experience during the Guatemala semester that she was a part of. And the Guatemala semester is something near and dear to my heart because one of my Bible quiz coaches, Maria Gray, has left us this semester. Moment of silence for our quizzers. Okay, that's enough. And she's doing a blog, and so my 8th grade daughter is on her blog and teasing Maria about food she doesn't like to eat, so on and so forth. But Jess's experience was altogether different, but it was still the same Guatemala experience. This is a great experience for our students, and Jessica's going to tell us all about her particular experience with the Guatemala semester. So without further ado, I give you Ms. Jessica Perfetti.
Well, I am a biology major, and my name is Jessica, just like Robert said. And I went to the Guatemala semester last spring, which was about a year ago now. I was there for the entire semester. It's like a 15-week program. And I went through the Guatemala semester program here at SAU. While I was there, I had the opportunity to study Spanish. I got to do 2 different internships related to biology. And I also just got to experience the culture of Guatemala. So I just want to share with you guys those experiences and just give you an idea of opportunities you might have if you go abroad. Not necessarily just Guatemala, but just in general. So I want to tell you a little bit more about Guatemala before I start talking. In case you don't know where it is, it's in Central America. It's bordering Mexico. And it is a rather small country. It is also a third world country, so poverty is a problem there, malnutrition, and there's also definitely issues with water supply and the cleanliness of the water. The weather there it's near the equator, so it's always warm. We, the people who go through the Guatemala semester program here, you stay in Antigua, Guatemala, which is a very beautiful city, and it's about a mile high in elevation, so even though it's near the equator, it's not very hot compared to if you go down to sea level where it's really humid and it's about like 90 to 100 degrees most of the time. But when you're in Antigua, it's like 70 to 85 degrees during the day. It gets cooler at night. It's really nice to sleep in that cool weather. Another thing is, let me see, I got a picture here of a street in Antigua, just so you can have an idea of like how beautiful it is. The streets in Antigua are all cobblestone, and this is the Arch, which is near Central Park in Antigua. And the buildings are all really brightly colored, and it's just a really beautiful place. It reminds me kind of what it would be like in Europe. I've never actually been to like Italy or anything, but for some reason it reminds me of what I would imagine would be there. So when you go to if you choose to go in the Guatemala semester program, I want to say this first. Something I learned while I was there was that one way to get the most out of life is to look upon it as an adventure. Because sometimes you're going to be in stressful situations when you go abroad where you don't really speak the language and you just feel like overwhelmed by it, or especially with internships like I had to travel on chicken buses, so it's a different form of public transportation. It might seem overwhelming, but if you look at it as an adventure and like just have fun with it, then it's a lot easier. And I guess you can apply that to more than just studying abroad, but also just like your classes and stuff when they're difficult. But when you go through SAU, you'll stay in a homestay, and that's other semester programs as well. So you get to stay with a local family. I got to stay with the Guatemala family, and this is a picture of the house I stayed in on the left. That's from the outside. And on the right, that's a picture from the inside. inside of the house. They have the house very open there, and the weather is really nice year round, so they just have like air flowing through, which I really love. And you can see kind of in that right picture, like if you look up at the top, that's just like the sky from the inside, because the patio on the inside is completely open to the sky. You just walk outside your bedroom and you're outside with a little roof covering in case it's raining, but in the middle of the patio, it's really open. And this is a picture of the people that I stayed with in my homestay. I was with a lot of people from SAU. That's not common. Usually you're with one other person. You have like a roommate from SAU, and then you stay in a homestay with a family. In the middle is Cindy. She's the mom that I was staying with, and then her son Anderson is in the picture too. He's 10 years old. And it was just really neat to be able to stay with them, and I got to know Anderson and Cindy really well. And they only spoke Spanish, so it was an opportunity to practice Spanish. And I ended up going to the marketplace with them, like once I learned more Spanish. Starting off, I didn't know very much Spanish. So if you feel like you couldn't do something like this because you don't know the language or something like that, like I really didn't know barely any Spanish. I had one semester in college and like one in high school. But even with that, like there were people who hadn't had any Spanish experience and went, and it was still a great experience for them. But I learned a lot of Spanish while I was there, and at first I didn't talk very much because I was afraid and I didn't really like making mistakes, and no one does. So eventually I learned that you just have to make mistakes and you have to put yourself out there. And yeah, eventually I got to know Cindy. That was probably halfway through the semester because that's when I could actually communicate with her. And then she would take me shopping in the marketplace, and I got to see it from her perspective. And then she also invited us to go to where her home village was, which was just outside Antigua. And her brother was a baker, so we got to bake with him, and that was really awesome. We made fresh bread and fresh pastries. And she also just took us to her home and let us see her family and meet her whole family. So that was really neat. Okay, so when you go down there, there's also a lot of different options for classes you can take. One thing that's most important is to start is the language lessons. You usually always take at least 3 weeks when you first get down there. For the first 2 weeks, you'll be studying Spanish in the morning. It's like 4 hours, and it's one-on-one with the tutor. You can kind of see in this picture. That's a picture of La Union, which is the Spanish school where you would be going, and you're sitting at a table with a Spanish-speaking person from Guatemala, and usually they only speak Spanish. Some have a little bit of English knowledge, but the tutor that I had, her name was actually Jessica, and he did it on purpose. It's just the Spanish version of Jessica. And then I had her for 3 weeks, and she didn't speak any English at all. So like she never spoke English to me, and so that was really challenging at first, but it was really cool to learn like with full immersion that way. And after taking 3 weeks, I decided I wanted another week because I was still wanting to learn more Spanish, so I took a 4th week, and you can do that as well. It's kind of more difficult to change, but I did that. Also, there's a professor called Nemechek who lives down there, and he was originally like a professor here, but he moved down to Guatemala, and he teaches lots of different courses. He's very knowledgeable, and I took statistics with him. You can take general education courses, and he lives in a house in Antigua that will be called the SAU Center, and you can go there. On Sundays, you'll hang out there, and he has like fun things to do. He has like a guitar to play, and then he has classes throughout the week, and you'll just go to his house and take the class in his house, and it's a really nice atmosphere. So I took statistics. He also teaches like a lot of core classes. He teaches a lot of social work classes, and I ended up taking just Core 274, 275, and then statistics, and then an internship in Spanish. So that was like my combination of classes. Core 274, 275 is a little bit different there because normally you go on like a 3-week cross-cultural, and it's all like traveling in those 3 weeks. But when you go for a semester, you do like all the traveling on the weekends. So it won't be every weekend. Sometimes it'll be multiple in a row, but most of the times like every other weekend you're going to a different place and experiencing a different area in Guatemala. And then I'll tell you more about my internships later, but I did one internship at a coffee plantation, a nonprofit that worked with coffee farmers, and then another one was at a medical clinic, and I'll tell you more about those. But, First, I'll start by talking a little bit more about 4274, 275. On the weekends, we went to some of the places we went were like Lake Guatemala, which is this big lake up in the mountains. It was between volcanoes, and it was at really high elevation. I'd never been to a lake that was like really high up before. Like when we were driving through clouds. And another thing about it was the water was completely clear, like really, really beautiful. Like I have not seen water that beautiful, but we also learned that it was contaminated, so we weren't supposed to swim in it. So I was like, that's a weird mixture for me. Like it's really dirty, but it's really clear. So Guatemala City was another place we went, and when we went there, we got to see the diversity in the poverty levels in Guatemala, because there's a large portion of the population is poor, but then there's a very small section that's just really, really rich. So when we went to Guatemala City, we got to go see the palace, and that was really beautiful. And we went to a mall where I was trying to find the most expensive thing, and there was like a pen that was like $1,000 or something, a couple $1,000. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, because I have not even seen a pen like that in the United States, like in a mall. But then we also went and saw the garbage dump, so that was like the other side, the city dump. It was like this huge valley where you could just see people picking through their trash, and that's how they made a living. So that was like a challenging experience as well. And we also went to Tikal, and I'll show you a few photos of that. And Pimbo, which is, the first time they went was with my semester, and it was a little island on the Pacific Ocean, and just off the coast of Guatemala, and you had to take a little boat out there. It was really awesome, and we stayed in these little huts. That's a picture that I took. So that was just a relaxing weekend. We also have some fun, relaxing things. But here's a few more pictures of Lake Guatemala. That's me canoeing with Jenny Humbach. I don't know if you guys know her. And then we also went on a coffee tour while we were there, which I was pretty familiar with already from my internship, but that was still a really neat experience. And then Tikal, those are Mayan ruins. I didn't really go into depth about the history of Guatemala, but there originally were Mayan people, indigenous people, just sort of like here, original people were Native Americans, and then it kind of got taken over by Spanish people, the Spaniards. So that's why the language now is Spanish. And I always, like, when I learned that, I kind of compared it to the U.S., like our main language is English, but it wasn't originally. There was a bunch of different indigenous languages, and that's just like there. But in Guatemala, there's still a lot of Mayans practicing, I guess, wearing their traditional clothing and speaking their indigenous language, like Cachiquel. I actually made some friends that spoke Cachiquel, but they usually also speak Spanish. Not all of them do, but a lot of them speak both languages. And in this picture on the left, you can see the temples in the background. And it's a day trip. You'll fly in a little private plane to get there, and you'll just see all of the beautiful things. And then that was the Tree of Life, which is like a sacred tree to the Mayans. So I thought that was really beautiful. And they told a story about it, but I don't remember the whole story. It was just like the roots in the top of the tree like represented different things to them. While I was there, I also got to hold a tarantula, which freaks a lot of people out, but it was really fun. And we got to see a lot of other wildlife just besides the tarantula. Like there was monkeys up in the trees when we were there, and there were these weird little raccoon animals. I forgot what they're called. I don't know if you guys know what they're called, but what?
Coramundi.
Yeah, coramundi. They're like little. They look like raccoons, and a mixture of that and like an anteater. They have like their little noses. So those were really cool to see, and they were just running around everywhere. And then that picture on the right is a view from the tallest temple in Tikal, so you could see really far. So that was a really cool experience as well. Then I'll talk a little bit more about my internships. That's a picture of the medical clinic where I was at. Clínicas Médicas San Jose is the name of it. And it was just a tall building. On the top floor, there's a dentist office. On the bottom floor, there's a doctor's office. And in the middle, that's a picture of the doctor that worked there. And on the left, that's actually the janitor who worked there, and she was really awesome. And I still talk to her on Facebook, but she's actually an adult, but she's really short. And most of the people there in Guatemala are very short. And a lot of it has to do with malnutrition, and some of it is just genetics. But I'm just taller than average in general, so when I was standing next to her, I made her look really, really tiny. But it was really cool to get to know her. But That's a picture of the inside of the waiting room at the medical clinic. How this clinic worked was during the beginning of the day, the kids would, only children were served at the clinic, so until like lunchtime, and then after lunch until like around dinner time, they would serve adults. And most of the people didn't have to pay, it was sort of like a nonprofit, but they would take only the first 10 customers that would come in, and they would give them a number for each of the time slots, and if there was too many people, they would just turn the rest away because that's all they had time for during the day, and then they would have to come back the next day to try to get treatment or get a checkup or whatever they were there for. So when I got there in the morning, there would be like a line out the door just of people waiting to try to get in and get a number. And what I had to do there was, all I had to do for the kids was take their weight and height and like measure the circumference of their head and then take their temperature. And if their temperature was like really high, then I would let someone know, like let the doctor know, and they would take them in. But if there was an adult there to see the dentist, because adults would come in the morning to see the dentist, then I had to take their blood pressure. So it wasn't like anything super intricate, but I do know a friend, Marie, who's actually sitting here. She went and worked at an internship in Guatemala recently, and she got to go to a different clinic and do more hands-on things and like give shots and do like examinations with the doctor. So if you were more interested in the hands-on, like more in-depth thing, like there are opportunities for that in Guatemala as well, but I just didn't do one that was like that. The staff there was one doctor, one dentist, and then a nurse, a secretary, and like an office worker. So it wasn't a whole bunch of people. And it was really cool. I didn't know going into it, they were all Christians. So when we got there, they would pray in the morning, and they only spoke Spanish as well. So that was cool though. Before we started the day, they would always pray together, and I just thought that was really neat. Some of the biggest issues I saw there were malnutrition and then just kids got parasites. So that has to do with like the drinking water and just the lack of food. And sometimes they have a lot of food, but or they can afford food, but it's things that don't have very much nutrition in them, like beans and rice. Like, and that's all they're eating, so they don't really have very much nutrients. The other internship I did was at a nonprofit called De La Gente, which that means of the people or for the people in Spanish, and it was an organization that worked with local farmers and farmers in Guatemala to just partner with them and help them get technology so that they could speed up the process of making coffee, and that helped them just make money because coffee takes a really long time to process and make. So if they didn't have the technology, then they wouldn't be selling enough to really make a living at all. So I got to work with the local coffee farmers. I got to just like go to their houses and see exactly how they made the coffee, like where they would take it. And I got to learn how much work really goes into a cup of coffee. So I'm definitely more appreciative of coffee than I ever was before. I just go to Starbucks or go to our little cafe and get whatever I want. But it's like there's so much that goes into like processing that coffee and making it. And I'll tell you a little more about that. But it was also a great opportunity for me just to practice Spanish because I was still learning, and the farmers only spoke Spanish as well. So that was a good opportunity. So growing and picking coffee, on the left, that's a picture of a coffee plant. It's just like an evergreen shrub. It's kind of, there's different varieties of it, and I learned about those as well. But the first week that I was working there, they took me on a coffee tour with a group of people, and we went up. I was actually, let me go back a little bit here. Antigua is between two volcanoes. Volcan Agua, Volcan Fuego. Fuego is active, Fuego means fire, and Agua is not. It's actually full of water, and it's called Agua, which means water. And I was working at these coffee farms that were on the side of Volcan Agua, and so we went up inside of the volcano with these farmers, and they just taught me a lot about the difficulty of growing coffee, like the plant in general, because you have to be at a certain elevation for it to be high quality. So the higher on the volcano was better. And then they also taught about the volcanic soil and how that's really great for the coffee plant. So that's why we're growing it on a volcano, which is one of the best options. And then also it needs a certain amount of shade, so they had specific recipes that they knew how to grow and where to grow them so that the coffee would have the right amount of shade. And also they taught me how to pick the berries and everything. So we went up there, we had these little baskets, and that's one of the baskets. And you'd be picking for 2 hours, and the basket would be like not even a third full. So it takes a really long time. We would just be up there picking, and then I was like, okay, now we're done. But really, everyone's basket was just like not very full at all because it takes a long time. And you have to pick, like you don't want to pick the green ones because they're not good. They're not good yet. They're not ready to be picked. So like red ones, and there's a few plants that have yellow ones that you would pick. And so inside of that coffee berry is the coffee seed that you actually eventually cook and turn into like coffee. So they told me that I could actually eat it too. So a few people there were eating the berry, and I tried it, and it was really sweet, but it did not taste like coffee at all, which makes sense, I guess. And so that was an interesting experience just to see like the whole coffee before it's been processed. And then what we did with that was we would take the buckets that we had filled, and we would pour them into like a sack, and then you have to carry it back down the volcano. And they don't have like anything; they just use themselves, or they use a horse. So it would be like really heavy. So we would take turns carrying it down the volcano, and it was a pretty good hike. And then we would take it back to their house. What they did there was they would squeeze the berry and squeeze the seed out. So originally they were doing it by hand, and that would take hours also to squeeze the seed out because there's this little white seed inside. So the nonprofit helped them get technology so that they just had this big vat where they would pour their berries in, and then they had a bicycle that they would ride, and it would move the berries through and remove the berry part, and then just the seed would get dropped out. So I got to see that, and that was cool. And then once they had the seed, it looks like, I didn't actually have a picture of that part before the shell's been removed, but there's like a white hard shell on it. And they take that and they have like a big area of pavement, and they'll lay all of the seeds out on it so that they dry up. And it takes usually like 1 to 2 days, sometimes 3 days, for the seeds to dry out enough so that you can take the shell off. So another thing nonprofit did was it bought an old like school playground, and they took and paved over like the basketball court and everything, so they had more space to try and dry out their seeds. And after you did the seed thing, you would take those and you'd have to carry them to one of the farmers' houses. So we were always just going to different people's houses, and they kind of all worked together, which was really neat to see the different families would. So we would take it to another farmer's house who would have the machine to take the shell off. So they had a big like generator, and they would put it in this huge machine. They would just pour all their seeds in, and then it would take the white shell off, and there would just be, I have another picture on here, these like pale green seeds that I'm sorting on the bottom right corner. Those are the beans, but they are like a pale green color before they're cooked. So we took those once we took the shell off, and then you had to put them in this big metal, it was like a shaker, I guess, but you had to shake it yourself. It was like flat thing with like little holes in it, and they were really tiny holes because you'd pour the green coffee beans over it, and then you would shake it to take all of the little tiny ones out, and they had a canvas underneath to collect the small ones. And they didn't want the small ones because they had this really specific thing about when they sold them to other companies, the companies would want them to be really pretty beans and the right size. So they were taking out the nasty ones, but they still use those. They sold them mostly really cheaply to like Guatemalan families because they taste the same, they just aren't big. So I learned about that. That was interesting too. And then once you get rid of the really tiny ones, you have to lay it on a table and sort them by hand. They don't have anything new for that. So that's me working like several times. I would be sitting there for a couple hours just sorting coffee beans and picking out the ugly ones. So you had to take out any ones that were hollow, or like any of the ones that were just like looking deformed, or if they had like rotten parts on them. Sometimes they would have like a black, like little rot type thing. So then we would take the ones that were good, and then the farmer would put those and package them and everything and send them. But it took a really long time, and I was like, oh my goodness, coffee is hard to make. So also sometimes it was really nice. One of the farmer's wives would take the coffee beans and actually just cook them on a skillet over the fire. And that was really neat to watch too, because you could just see them turn brown. And then there was actually a really thin, like, I don't know what it's called, but like layer on the coffee bean. When you cook it, it pops off, sort of like a popcorn shell, and you blow it off. So I didn't know that was there either, so there's more. And then they grind it like on a stone thing, so it was like all by hand. And then that'd be like the freshest coffee I probably ever drank. And then also I could eat the seeds. the cook students, they would like be like, oh, you want one? And the kids wanted them too. They were always begging their mom for them. So you just eat them. Mom would be like, only two. So it was really cool though. And I also learned that they usually just ship the coffee out as green beans, and then like they have, or the nonprofit like partnered them with a lot of United States owned like coffee companies. So they'd send them there, and then they would cook them in the United States. So that was a way they could make money off of it easier too, because it's like the process of cooking coffee is super like technical. You need a certain pressure and temperature and everything to cook the coffee at a good like, because there's the different roasts and everything, which I don't know that much about roasts because I wasn't learning that much about it because I didn't do it there, but yeah, they just had to cook it really specifically. And on the left, that's a picture of one of the farmer's sons. One time I got to ride up beside a volcano in a pickup truck. That was fun. So the back of the truck, and most of the time we walked though. So that's the one time. And then the girl on the right, she's actually from Canada. So when you're there, like sometimes in your houses, there will be people from like all over the world, like Norway or Denmark, random other places, Australia, that you'll meet. And on this internship, I actually met like people from Norway and just like all over the world because they would also be volunteering there. And that's how dirty your hands were after taking the coffee berries. So that's, I don't know, I just took a picture of her. But something else that I learned about there was roya fungus, which I actually don't know how to pronounce the scientific name, but it is a huge problem right now, like at all coffee plantations. It's pretty much spread around the whole world. I did some research on it, but that's a picture that I actually took of a leaf that was at the one of the plantations where I was working, because there was a bunch. But pretty much every coffee farm I went to with the farmers, they had the fungus on their plants. So what happens basically is in Guatemala there's a wet season and a dry season. The wet season is well, I was there for mostly the dry season in the spring, but toward the end of the spring semester, it started to become the wet season. During the dry season, the fungus isn't as bad, but when it's wet and when it's raining, it causes the spores to, like, in the wind, moves the spores from plant to plant, and they need moisture on the underside of the leaf to move into the plant. They go in through the stomata, and then it just looks like an orange rusty color, and eventually it will kill the leaf, and the leaf will fall off, and then the plant just can't do as much photosynthesis, can't make as much food, and then it can't make as much fruit because it has no way to get energy. And then eventually the plant dies. So it takes a while, but you decrease fruit production, which is a big problem as well. And treatment for it, the only thing they could do at my coffee plantation was use fungicides or chemicals. And they originally were organic, like certified organic, but once the fungus came, they had no way, like, it was kind of lesser of two evils. They either had to like lose their way of living or use chemical or fungicide. So that was something that was interesting to learn about as well. And the nonprofit helped them pay for it because they couldn't even afford to treat the coffee plants at all. And so I did research on like ways that this could be treated, and like researchers have been trying to find like ways to create a resistant like breed of coffee plant, just like all this stuff, but I don't know too much details about it because I was just doing my own research. And all I know right now is that they use fungicides for that at the farm where I was working. But it's definitely an issue. And that was cool to learn about. But there's also other things you can do, like my internship was in the morning, and then I had lots of free time in the afternoon, and so it was like working a job. But one thing I chose to do on the weekend was go to an orphanage, and one of the girls I was there with from SAU, her name was Keely DeWitt, but she ended up actually organizing it, so we went together. And I'll tell you more about that. But also, there's tons of restaurants in Antigua, and just fun things to do. Yeah, there's like just endless options. Like I don't think I went to every restaurant while I was there, but this is a picture of La Luna de Miel, which is one of my favorite restaurants there. It's a crepe shop, and it's really delicious. Also, when you go in the spring semester, there's Holy Week and a lot of processionals during that time, and it's around Easter, so usually like for the 3 weeks before Easter, they already start celebrating it, or 4 weeks sometimes, and they just have such a huge celebration for it. They have like people going through the street. They make these things called alfombras, which are made of sawdust, and they dye the sawdust, and then they like take these intricate patterns and put it all over the streets, and then parades come through and destroy it. But it's still really cool to watch, and they have these huge, I don't know what they're called, like the float type things, because they're not actually floats, but they're big things that are designed, and they hold them on their back, so they don't like carry them around the street on wheels or anything. It's cobblestone, but they have like multiple people around them just carrying them. And they're usually scenes from like the crucifixion, or just from like before Jesus was dying, like the dinner at the table and everything. Also, another thing that happened while I was there was I met a lot of really cool friends and people that I hope to stay friends with forever. It'd be awesome to go back and visit them. I'm not sure if I'll be able to, but I'll show you some pictures of them too. Also, Paul Nemechek, the professor that works down there, he usually saves a fund from like the trip from 1474, and at the end of the semester he will do a service project if the students are interested. So while I was down there, we got to do a service project towards the end of the semester using like the funds that were left over, and I have a picture of that too. But this is some of the kids from the orphanage where I went. Almost half the kids there were infants, so that was interesting, and it was really cool to be able to hold them. And the girl on the upper right, her name was Yvonne, and she was just a really sweet girl, and it was kind of an interesting experience, and I guess it helped me have compassion, because when I was there, like the first 5 minutes, she was like, let's go play. So I went to play with her, and then she was like, you're my mom. And I was like, oh, like I just felt really bad. And then I was like, can I be your big sister? And she was like, nope, you're my mom. And then I was like, okay. And I think it was just a really great experience just to like have compassion, like understand more what it's like for them. And I felt bad because I wasn't there very long. Like I wish I could have stayed and like committed to more time and just come and see them for a weekend and leave, because like that's what happens to them all the time. And in the upper left corner, that's just some of the other kids that we were just reading together. But there's lots of opportunities for you to, if you are proactive about it, you can find other things to do on weekends when you have weekends free, like go to an orphanage. So here's some pictures from Holy Week. Upper left corner, that's one of the float type things that they would carry around, just representing the crucifixion. On the upper right, that's another one, that's Jesus carrying the cross. And then the bottom right is a picture of an alfombra, one of the carpets. It was a really great one, and sometimes they're inside churches, so that one was inside of a church. And also before Holy Week, they'll have these things called relaciones, where they kind of have scenes from the Bible, and they have like an audio tape playing in the background where it's just like a frozen scene, and you go in and you watch it, and there's like masses of people just like shoulder to shoulder going into the church to see it. So it's crazy. And then they have like a street fair type thing on just outside where they'll be selling tons of street food, and they have this thing called, I forgot to say it, locos, like corn, crazy corn on the cob, basically. Elote, yeah. Elote loco, yeah. Those were so good. It was so weird though. They take the corn, they cook it, and then they put like mayonnaise and hot sauce and ketchup on it and mustard. And they like wanted me to try that. The friends that I met down there like bought it for me, and they're like, try all these things. I tried it. It was really weird, but I think it's fun to try weird things. So that was a really good experience too. And then, the bottom left corner, that's just like one of the processionals coming out of the church that was there. So here's some of the friends that I met while I was down there. I actually was just in Central Park waiting for a few friends because we were going to study Spanish together. And I randomly met this guy who was Amish and from Ohio, which I thought was really funny because he was from Ohio and I'm from Michigan, and we were just laughing about it. But also, he was Amish, which I guess like I had stereotypes about Amish people because I didn't really ever know one. So I was just kind of like, oh, why is he here in Guatemala? Like, you're Amish. How'd you get here? So basically, I ended up like talking to him for a long time, and then my friends finally got there. I introduced them to him, and then we ended up like hanging out with him a few times after that. And he just told us about like his lifestyle. So it was like learning about another culture from the United States, like in another country. So that was a really neat opportunity. And I just learned a lot of how all Amish people are very different. So he was like New Order Amish, is very liberal, and he was actually there because he wanted to learn Spanish and he wanted to work at a home for boys, and he said he wanted to live out his faith. So it was a really cool thing to like see that. And he ended up introducing me to some of his other Amish friends, and then he left. So I met some of the other guys, and on the upper left corner, the guy in the orange shirt, he's Chris. He was one of the Amish guys. Who actually isn't Amish anymore. He decided not to be. But yeah, he's not wearing Amish clothing. That's the orange shirt. But that was interesting too. And he introduced me, and Lucas introduced me to this family that you see in like the bottom picture. They're all in there. It's kind of blurry, but some of them are in the upper left picture as well. And they're like, oh, I think you'd really like to meet this family. They were just, they just sold stuff in Central Park. They like made their own crafts, and they also did hair braids and stuff. And they would just always be in Central Park every day. And then they lived in a village just outside Antigua, and they were Mayan, and they wore like the traditional clothing. And they also wore non-traditional clothing too, just depending on what they were doing and what they wanted to wear. But I got to meet them, and I spent like, that was like halfway through the semester, so I spent like half my semester going like every day to the park to spend time with them like after my internship, because it was just really neat. And they spoke Spanish. They also taught me a little bit of Kachikal, but I don't remember it. But they like were a great opportunity to practice Spanish, get to know someone, and to see like the culture from a different perspective. And then they invited me to go swimming with them. There was like, that's what the upper left picture is. There's like a swimming pool like complex thing that you could pay to get into by their house. And then they invited us over afterwards to eat pizza, and that's, yeah, to eat pizza. They love pizza there. They also put mayonnaise and ketchup on their pizza. That's another thing. So that's inside of their bedroom. So they only had like 3 beds. They had like 2 bedrooms and like a kitchen area, and they had 8 people living in their house. So that was really cool to be able to experience that as well. And they were just so hospitable and so happy. They had really like barely anything. So I guess it was just really neat to see like that really having things isn't what's going to make you happy. And they were like, they had a great family dynamic. They were just really supportive of each other. And yeah, they had 6 kids, and one of them was a boy, and then the rest were all girls, and a mom and a dad. And yeah, Magda was one of the friends I met. She's on the left in the top picture. She's actually a year older than me, so she's like probably almost 23, and she is studying English, and she's like hoping to, I don't know, do something with that. But it was cool because she would like bring her English homework to me, and I sometimes could help her. It was like really confusing sometimes. I was like, wow, this is hard homework. But it was neat to do that with her. And then her sister's in the right corner. Her name's Austria. She was just really cute, and it was great to get to know her. Then this is a picture of the service project that we did. Paul probably helped a lot with the funds. It probably wasn't all from ours because he's super generous, but we just went to a friend's house that had a dirt floor, and we helped them pave that floor with cement. So we had to bring all of the cement and mix it, and it was a lot of fun, and the family was really helpful, so they did it with us, so that was really cool. Like, we worked with them, and then there's a few girls at the bottom who were from SAU that were doing it as well, so just whoever wanted to participate did it. And then Paul's in that left picture helping. Can't see his face, so it's not very helpful. But after we were done, they fed us, like the whole time we were there, they were cooking. And then when we were done, they fed us like a traditional Guatemalan meal. I don't remember what it was called, but it was chicken and like red sauce and rice. Huh? Yeah, it was heavy on. It was so good. And then after that, they took us out to ice cream. So it's a classic thing too, but it was really fun. So I guess I just want to share with you if you're like interested in this at all, or even going somewhere else. It doesn't, like if you go in a semester program with SAU, it doesn't cost anything extra. It's the same as going here, and all the same scholarships still apply. So like to me, that was kind of a scary thing, but once I found that out, I was like, oh, this is actually possible. And I actually ended up getting a scholarship, which I'll tell you more about. So it didn't cost, it actually like cost me less to go on the semester abroad than it would have just to go here for a semester. And then you should apply early, preferably. I think I applied a year before I went, but there are still openings, I think, for like even the next fall semester. So if you were interested in going, like you could still go. It's just like you'll have to do more work and more organizing to get there. And then you can go to the cross-cultural office, talk to them. Carol's here if you need any, if you have any questions for her. Yeah, you can go there to get help for that. And then you should also plan ahead, like look at your 4-year plan. Do just see like if you can fit it with all your classes. And I guess if you want to go for a shorter amount of time, you can try to go for a J term and do something like different, like work at a clinic, which Marie did. So, yeah, you just want to make sure you plan ahead and make sure you're going to be able to graduate on time if you need to graduate at a specific time. And if you can't, like if you need to go an extra year, then you could do that too. And then you're going to have like a short interview after you apply. It's not very scary at all. It's just to make sure you're really interested in it. And then you want to talk to your advisor and your registrar and everything. Just let them know what's going on and just ask them for help and figuring out like how you can make it fit. And then yeah, you can go to the cross-cultural office, which I just said. And then there's another opportunity, which is something I did, was I applied for the Gilman Scholarship, International Gilman Scholarship Program. And it's very helpful. You get $3,000, $5,000. And there's a huge success rate for people who apply here. And Diane Kurtz is super helpful in getting like your application done. And she just like checks your essay and she gives you a lot of advice. So it's not like a difficult or scary thing to apply for. And I know several people that went with me on my semester program got the scholarship as well. And it's just 2 essays. One of the first one is just like why you want to go abroad and like what you think you'll learn from it and where you see yourself going in your future. And then the second one is more like just a follow-on project that you could do when you get back to share your experience with other people. And this was originally supposed to be part of that, but I turned in my stuff a long time ago, so this isn't actually part of that. But what you'll do is you can do things like make a blog, you can use your Facebook. Like I did a blog full time I was there, so part of it I was doing there, but usually you do most of it when you come back. You could also like write something for a newspaper. Like there's a lot of ideas, and Diane always helps with ideas for that as well. And then you want to apply for the Gilman Scholarship before the deadline, which I don't know what the deadlines are. So there's deadlines for this. I'm like applying for the semester program. So if you want to know those, there's a workshop coming up, which I have a paper for up here, and they'll tell you like what the deadline is and when you need to apply by. And then there's also, I have a list of people's, like students from past blogs up here if you want to read any of their blogs. And I also have like the Guatemala interest event flyer, and then I have a list of like classes that you can take. And I also have a list of different internship opportunities, so I'll list some of those off because like there's a lot more than just what I did. There's like business, communication, global studies, ministry, physical therapy, pre-medical, pre-dental, psychology, sociology, and social work. So there's a lot of opportunities for internships. And then I also have a flyer for the Gilman Scholarship if you want one of those. So I guess where to go from here. No matter where you go into cross-cultural, be open-minded and adventurous. You never know what will happen or who you'll meet. You could meet some Amish people, or you could just have fun. I don't know. There's a lot of things that will happen that you won't expect, and it's just a really fun experience to have. So I guess at this time, if anyone has experiences that they had that they would like to share, or if they have questions, you could ask those. So that's all.
Yeah. What are the Guatemalans' views in general on Americans in general? Do they vary well?
Well, in Antigua, it's very popular for tourism. So they see a lot of people coming there and spending a lot of money and going to clubs and drinking. So generally, I mean, what I saw was, it depended on the atmosphere you were in, but sometimes you were viewed as like, kind of like obnoxious or just rich, but other times, and like guys there like do like catcalling type of things a lot, but there was also like at the clinic I worked at, like I guess if they got to know you, then they had a different view of Americans, depending on who you were. I don't really know, but I guess Spencer might have a comment.
My Spanish teacher actually was not aware of the U.S. national debt. I tried to explain to her that, you know, our country is actually spending more money than we have wait, what? I thought the United States was rich. And so it was this really interesting disconnect, because she just had assumed things were just always up, and was pretty much blind to like the controversies that we do actually have. So.
What kind of stereotypes did you go to Guatemala with that might have been modified or even dispelled?
I guess one of the huge things I learned, I don't know if it's a stereotype probably, but you think you're gonna go somewhere and help people. Like, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna help. But like a lot of times they don't need help in the way you would think they like, and I need help. Like that's another thing you learn. Like, oh, I need help too. But like they don't need help in the way you would think they would need help. Like most of the time, like they want to spend time with you or talk to you or like learn about your culture or you'll learn about theirs. But it's not like give me money or something. Like if you just give someone money, a lot of times it's kind of an insult. It's not like you're just, I don't know. Like we have this view of like helping people, like going there and improving their lives or something. But a lot of times it's way more complicated than what you think. Like you can't just go somewhere and do stuff and then leave. Like it's just not good for them. So I guess that's one of the things that I learned.
If I could just say that I think something that my eyes were open to was the fact that people come to our country who don't know or live in English, and they have to try to live. And the first 4 days that I was in Guatemala, I could barely communicate with my family, and just how my affect changed because I couldn't communicate. I felt more depressed, more introverted than my normal self, and just thinking about people who leave their homes and come here looking for a better life. They could be very successful people in Guatemala, but because they can't communicate, you might automatically assume that they just don't know anything. I felt very stupid. I felt like I couldn't communicate how much I knew about biology or medicine or caring for patients because I couldn't do it in Spanish. And so that was something that really opened my eyes to people who come here looking for a better future. That they need brilliant people. So that's what that does.
Yeah, language was definitely something I thought would be easier to learn, but it's really hard. That's something I guess a stereotype I have, like, oh, by the time I leave, I'll be able to understand this song in Spanish, and I'm like, well, I'm getting there, but it's not really that great. So it's still a lot of work, and it's really hard. And then when I came back, like, if I heard someone speaking Spanish, like if you try to speak Spanish, especially here, like it's really, like it usually makes me really happy, because like you're making an effort to just communicate with them the way they'd like to be communicated with. That was really cool. Any other questions? Or if you have any that you just like to come talk to me, or talk to Carol, or talk to someone, then you can do that. Or any of these guys. They all respond. Guess that's it.